everybody. Welcome to the Cognitive Dissidents podcast, or is it a show? I don't know. We'll call it a podcast, Cognitive Dissidents podcast. I'm your host, Parallel Mike from the Parallel Systems broadcast and Parallel Mike podcast. And I'm joined by my co-host, and Monica. I'm going to hand it over to you because it looks like you are back in your beautiful house. So do you want to just update us as to how it's going over there?
Absolutely. Yes. I'm Monica Perez from the Monica Perez Show. And last time we talked was 2 days after my entire town, we were right in the middle of the blast zone for one of the two big LA fires. And I mean, when I was talking to you, I really still smelled like smoke. I was absolutely shaking. I didn't want to cancel our show. And so the difference between that, which was about 1 month ago, I think 4 weeks almost to it's 4 weeks to the day since the fire. And just it's been such a long road, even for me, and my house didn't burn down. I mean, it was damaged, but we managed, many things came together for us to save it. And it was a lot, even this past month, there's a lot of scare about toxins and you can't go up there. And our gas was out, our power was out, our electricity is out, our Wi-Fi is still out. So we had to buy a weird little station for the house. Had to the elusive Mr. Perez for that. And so it was amazing. They had sheriffs, police, the National Guard stopping us from coming home. In the beginning, we were climbing over fences and stuff and gates because there were animals up there. My neighbor had chickens. We had a lot of steak in the freezer. We had to access the house just to, button it up. And we were okay with the sheriff and the cops. Like we would be like, hey, can we go in? And they'd say no. And then we'd be walking out with backpacks full of stuff. And they're like, so I guess you got in. We're like, When the National Guard showed up, I was a little freaked because I really don't know any of them, but my idea was like, they might be weekend warriors who are just like, hey, I never get to use this thing. I thought I'm probably not going to be the guy who's sneaking around. And but after, they were nice though. When you went through, there were checkpoints, but they weren't super crazy. Like I didn't have my current driver's license, but I had like a piece of mail. They weren't super crazy. And I was like, yeah, they make you think they're super scared you about looters. So they made you feel like they were there for you. And they were. I mean, there were 2 motorcycle cops in front of our house. We were like, okay, we don't need to, sneak in to sleep over. And then at the end of 2 weeks, we had the gas back, the power back, the water back. The power, I think, was an error, a mistake. A lot of the thing, we're still not supposed to use the water, but I'm kind of using it for some stuff anyway. But the one difference maker the whole time, I think even down to getting electricity back, was that my neighbor would not, I call him Chad, he would not leave his premises. So I think when they went to string the lines back up and rebuild the telephone poles, I think he came out and said, hey, do my house first. And my house is connected to his because none of the other people have it. So I just feel like everything points to do not abandon. So then I'll just wrap it up by saying what do you do next? I remember Hrvoje, you wrote a post about DIY era is coming. The do-it-yourself era is coming. Totally true. So we had great insurance, which we will probably never have again. So Mike, your idea about having a fire hose connector in the pool, definitely we're doing that with a 150-foot hose. Like we have to protect our own property now. But insurance said, oh yeah, we'll get somebody in there. I mean, tens of thousands of dollars to clean all the ash. It's super toxic, to clean your upholstery, all of that stuff. But we can't even put you on that 30-day waiting list until after we get all the paperwork done. And they still haven't gotten the paperwork done. And because our house wasn't burned down, we didn't rent a house for months. So we had to come back. And I mean, at first I was wearing a mask and then I was like, screw it. But it took just for my bedroom, it probably took me 8 hours to clean every lipstick, every piece of paper, every book. You really want to get rid of that ash. I've got 4 big air purifiers, and then I have a couple of these things, which have been really helpful. They're air monitors, so they tell you the particulates and also how much of the stuff in the air is organic compounds. It's helpful because they told us not to use the water because it vaporizes all this bad stuff. Well, so I locked this thing in the shower, next to the shower, and the numbers still looked good. So now I take a shower. I don't know if I'm crazy. It's do it yourself. I've got to do the best I can. And, but I got to say, last thing, I'm unbelievably happy. I keep thinking of you, Mike. You're like, so if your house is a beater, maybe you want it to go up in flames. And I'm like, every house I've ever lived in would have been like this, but I love this house. And I just feel conflicted because literally 9,000 structures, almost all of which were homes, were burned to the ground. And I wait online at the post office, and I'm the only person who has a house standing, and everyone's super, happy. They're like, oh, I know, some people know the house, and because it's old. And I decided I had 2 bad days. One was when I just felt really, really bad for all the other people. And the next day I said, I can't be depressed. I've got to just pull myself up by my bootstraps. That's what I've always done. And then the next time was when they said, it's super toxic. You can't go back. We're not going to give you a place to stay or whatever. You were not going to fix it up for you for months. And then again, I was like, I just got to do this myself. So now I'm happy. I feel a little guilty about it, but there is no place like home.
Yeah, I think you need to get your Bible on that bookshelf behind you in the pride of place, because it does feel like he was... So yeah, some kind of
bottom
going on there.
I had I put all my jewelry on, so I was wearing 2 crosses. I was saying the Hail Mary. That's true. I saved all my top shelf first edition books, Ayn Rand, Tragedy and Hope, but I didn't take the family Bible. Shame on me.
Well, then maybe that's what protected your house. So it might be a good.
It could be.
I just imagine if the flames had have hit your house, there'd have been lots of explosions from
a lot of little explosions.
And by the sounds of it, the smell of really good cooked steak.
Yeah, there would have been a lot of suspicious noises and explosions. But every house actually did explode. Most of the houses explode. I still can't figure it out. My husband said he saw it. There'd be a pile of rubble, and then at the end, it would go boom. And you would hear the explosion and you would see it come up. I think maybe it was like ovens or whatever filling with gas and then bursting, but it was pretty common. And at the end, you would just see gas, the pilot light, like the gas line into the house burning for, a couple of days. It was weird.
Well, I think that's kind of amazing. Like literally a month ago, we did our cognitive dissonance show. You just had that big crisis, and now you're back at home. So congratulations on that. And yeah, hope this
even that was miracles continued, like the electricity. When other people said, how'd you get electricity? They literally called the electric company and said, how come she has it? And the electric company said they were not on the schedule. It was a mistake. Just wait your turn. So
yeah, I might actually, if you're up for it, Monica, it'd be great to talk about that on the podcast, my podcast. I'd love to have you on just to talk about what this event has been.
And survival, like we have our own, we all chipped in for our own patrol, stuff like that. Happy to talk about it.
And Hrvoje, you've had quite a busy month. You told me that you'd been at the People's Reset and you did 11 interviews over how many days was that?
Yeah, I also want to comment just for the people listening on the Geopolitics and Empire stream. This is a roundtable I do every month with Mike and Monica. And let me share my screen. You can see it. Yes, I posted this for subscribers only. But so Derek Bros organizes every year the People's Reset. And he asked me, Ryan Christian of Last American Vagabond was supposed to be there. He couldn't make it. And he was supposed to be on this media panel. And Derek just asked me to come up instead, and sitting next to me is Dan Aston Gregory, who's a famous podcaster in England. And then to the left of me is Ruben Luengas, who's a legendary Mexican journalist. And so for me, it's been wow to be there. And then I recorded an interview with Ruben in Spanish, and I'm starting a Spanish podcast. You can see some of these photos. This is Rob from our Geoengineered Age, I think it's called. And, Jason Christoph, maybe you're familiar with. And there's Dan and John Manley, Canadian. He's got some great books. It's a Mexican activist. And there's Ruben. He invited me to his house. He's interviewed Hillary Clinton, Obama, you name it. And so, yeah, that's been my past.
How do you feel about the in-person interviews, Hrvoje? Do you prefer them to the Zoom ones? Because I've only ever done one with Johnny Hoddle, who I know you did one too with as well. So yeah, I prefer the in-person ones. I find have a big, it feels different. So how did you find doing so many of them?
Both are nice, but I have these Rode Wireless Go's, and it's more work doing in person versus just having the Zoom recording. But I find them enjoyable. And from like a doing perspective, is actually fun in person because you're hanging out in person. But then there's a little bit more work in the editing process. But so yeah, I just this morning interviewed Jacob Nordengard, his latest book, Temple of Solomon. And I might be in Europe next year. I just realized, Mike, I can visit you maybe.
Yeah, I'll make, Europe's not that big, so we can definitely find a way to meet up.
So I want
to go to Poland.
Let's do cognitive dissonance from Poland. But anyways, yeah, that was my, I told Jacob that, maybe I'll pass through Sweden and we'll record an in-person interview. So that's the cool thing now with having the gear to be able to do it. And I've learned how to do it. So yeah.
Good. I interviewed Jacob about, it was just before Christmas, and we was just getting to some really juicy part of the interview, talking about how in the past his research, they tried to stifle it, and the Club of Rome literally tried to stop his dissertation for his thesis being said. They called up the university, and just as we got into that, all of the power went out at his house and we never got it back. So the interview cut short after about an hour and 20 minutes. And I haven't released it for that reason, but I think I will in the coming week or so. But yeah, it's interesting how it was right at that point where we was talking about censorship from powers unseen. But I think now is a good time to get into some of our topics, guys, because we've got a lot tonight. So I thought maybe we'd begin with the executive orders. And I'm not going to lie, we've got a lot of Trump-related content today because there's just been so much stuff that's happened in his first few weeks. So you guys are both American citizens. How do you feel about the executive orders in general? It feels to me, as somebody outside of the US, quite a strange thing for a republic to have this mechanism where you can just bypass Congress and have diktats, essentially. So how do you guys feel about them? And was there any that stood out to you as important?
I'm happy to go first. I hate the breakdown of the separation of powers. I'm reading this book, Makers of the Modern Mind, and they hit like some of the thinkers that led to how we think today. One of them is Locke. And he said one of the two things that are critical, I forget what the other one is, but that you absolutely cannot have the same people who or person or entity who makes the laws be the one who executes them, or you have tyranny. I hate executive orders. I hate administrative agencies, those are both legislation from the executive branch. There's no checks and balances there. I don't even like the Supreme Court opining on congressional law. I think if congressional law is bad, then the states don't have to enforce it. But so the executive orders from Trump, I hate that as a general rule. I think specifically in this case, because it's a lot of the stuff is disruptive and antagonistic. It's at best, it won't outlast his term. And at worst, it will spark a reaction so that if you have legislation, if I understand it correctly, they still at least respect the legislative process. And I think Kane, one of the senators, said he has no statutory right to do this. Yes, he has no statutory right to do that, but they allow it anyway. So you could spark congressional reactions that will memorialize the things he was trying to get rid of. But I think 72 of his executive orders was one executive order just negated 72 of Biden's executive orders. So I was kind of okay with that one. But that sets a precedent, which happened with there's an abortion thing where the first thing the president does is undo what the last president did. And I feel like you can just start a really disruptive process of every 4 years, negating all the other executive orders. But yeah, I think it's unconstitutional and disruptive and probably intentionally causing a reaction. And I could go on, but I won't.
Yeah, I find it strange because, on some level, it's great that you can have some of these things just happen, like Ross Ulbricht, which I know was a big one for you. You was talking about that going into it. But then on the other hand, it's like, well, is that what we want? Because we don't get to vote on these things. They can't be directly overturned by lawmakers, and there's no discussion about it in Congress. So, yeah, I think it could certainly be used as a tool of tyranny, but it's not Trump's fault that it exists. And of course, he's going to use it. So it's not a negative against him. And some of them were pretty... I found some of them interesting, but a lot of them were related to things like technocracy as well. Like he removed the one that Biden did against, it was kind of like trying to constrain AI and to put safeguards there. And Biden was a fruit, so I'm not, I don't think anything that he did is that important in the long term. But we'll talk about Operation Stargate because I think that's a big one. And the other one was also there was one on anti-Semitism. I think in fact, I'll just share my screen for a second and then you guys feel free to jump back in. Yeah, so one of the ones that people were, you're the host, Hrvoje. I think you need to give me a, okay, cool. Right, so this was an interesting one because they had Howard Lutnick up there, and the first thing that he started discussing was vaccines for COVID. And I thought, you think if Trump was sat down at a strategy meeting, they'd say, "No, let's not talk about that part. Let's brush that one under the carpet." And yet, in two different meetings in the White House in the first week, they discussed mRNA and vaccines. And this was the first one, and it was related to the executive order. So I'm just going to play this clip for us, and I'd love to get your take on it.
Extraordinary size and scale of the U.S. government and the business it does with companies should create value for American citizens. If we are going to buy 2 billion COVID vaccines, maybe...
This is just a bad video, so I'm sorry, guys, I didn't vet the video. But basically, Howard Lutnick there is saying that Trump did an executive order about a sovereign wealth fund, and he's saying, yeah, if we're going to have companies sell all these vaccines to the US, we should be getting something from that. So it was an interesting example that he chose. The sovereign wealth fund idea. Does anyone have any opinion on that?
You're more of the financial guy, but I've got a bigger, on the bigger just grand scheme of things. You're mentioning all this stuff, and I got a few clips as well. But if I could just give my quick take, and then the sovereign wealth fund thing, I want to share my screen. So this was Zero Hedge, where they posted, "What's happening is breathtaking," from Chris Martenson. And it's kind of touching on what you've been bringing up now. The Trump revolution has begun. Trump has started a revolution. It's underway, and I'm 100% here for it. The short story is this is seismic, right? He's doing all of these things. And
Did he mean Semitic?
Huh? Seismic. Seismic. And my comment is, what's happening is breathtaking. The New World Order is being installed right under our noses. And I just noticed this comment from someone who follows me just now. They say, "Your despair is getting unbearable." I responded, "Your hopium is getting unbearable." And so, basically there you go. Cypher in the Matrix. He wants to eat the artificial Matrix steak again. And that is my response. And so, yeah, I don't see anything. I mean, Howard Lutnick, Tether, mRNA vaccines, executive orders, diktats. This is I was on a stream this morning with AM Wake Up with Steve Boykonen. And basically I said, you got to give the mice some cheese before they move into the trap.
That's what Ross Ulbricht. So I can give you a couple of things on that. First of all, a sovereign wealth fund, to me, I don't believe in government regulation. I don't believe in research money. It completely directs all this funding to things that are on the agenda, not for representing the people. It crowds out private funding. Sovereign wealth fund, no doubt, will further agendas that politicians are being bribed to or whatever, not in our favor. Probably lead to public-private partnerships. Another thing I absolutely hate. It just socializes where the money comes from and privatizes where it goes to. I mean, it's fascism to me. Like, that's just one of the building blocks of fascism. And I just did want to say about the Ross Ulbricht thing is a piece of cheese. I don't think Assange is legit. I don't think Edward Snowden is legit. There's no doubt in my mind that Ross Ulbricht was legit, that he was railroaded for beginning the Silk Road, the new Silk Road, whatever they call the thing on the dark webs. And he was railroaded, I think, set up. They may even have killed somebody to set him up. And the people, I think it was a DEA agent and a Secret Service agent, both went to jail for malfeasance in his case. And he was not allowed to bring that up at his trial. And then he was given 2 life sentences plus 40 years. It looked like he was never going to get out. And Trump said he was going to let him out. And I said, I'll never criticize Trump personally if he lets him out. So I'm never going to just, call him Orange Man or whatever. But he did let him out. And I assume why he didn't do it at the end of his last term, A, to use it as a chit for the libertarians, but B, it was probably some serious negotiation about how Ross would present this and what his role would be going forward. So I kind of am going to give him a pass on that, Ross, for whatever the future may hold for him. He needed to get out of prison. And it's probably the best thing a president's ever done that I can think of.
Yeah, I thought it was good too. And I think you probably nailed it, Hrvoje, when you said it's like the cheese in the trap. It's like, I see it like, they're all feasting at the table and they've got to throw a few scraps off to make people believe that they've got what they voted for. And in the case of Trump, it's somebody that's going to be heroic. But when you look at the bigger picture as to what they're actually talking about, and Operation Stargate and transhumanism, and then you had Larry Ellison, which we'll come back to later. I've got the video for that, talking about these new tailor-made vaccines that you're going to get. It's going to be done in 24 hours. It's like, yeah, those things are way more consequential than some of these small bones that you're getting thrown over there in the US.
I've got a funny video of Trump. Can we play it since we're talking about it? It's a minute and a half. It's where's why I click on share? Here we go. So this is from G0, which is Ian Bremmer. It's like the mainstream geopolitics guy who sucks and is boring and nobody listens to. They pump up the numbers. It's like, But anyways, I actually thought this was funny. And I think we need to be able to laugh. Even if you're on the Trump train. Like, I don't like G0. I don't like Ian Bremmer. They gave you the false official narrative. But come on, this is funny. So here's Trump puppets. It says Trump has renamed the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Why would he stop there when he can rename everything?
Good afternoon. After very strongly renaming the Gulf of Mexico as Gulf of America, we will be making further changes effective immediately. Europe will now be known as America Plaza East. The Panama Canal will be known as Trump America Canal of Trump. And of course, Turkey will now be known as Chicken.
Why are you renaming Turkey in particular?
Why are we doing it? Because we can. What are they going to do about it? Does Turkey want a beef over being called chicken? We'll call them beef. Also, we're going to name Hungary Thirsty. But don't worry, the Prime Minister will do whatever I tell him.
What is behind this policy of changing everyone's name?
Because America will no longer allow people to tell us what to call them. It's like the pronouns. It's over. So what's that? Zelensky's on line 3? Put him on speaker. What else do you want? We're cutting off the aid to meet... Mr. Trump, we demand that you call our country Trump Crane. Trump Crane? Boy, I always thought of it more of a me crane than a Ukraine, but tell me more. Greater Trump Crane. Greatest Trump Crane. Deal! And we will also rename Donbass Donald Bass and retake from Russia. Deal! I love it. Sally, tell Pete Hegseth to give these Trump Cranians whatever they want.
Come on, it was funny, no?
It's super funny. Yeah, very cute.
I liked it. Okay, so I've got a few more of the tariffs here. So one of them that one of the executive orders was Doge, which, I've done a lot of work on the history of finance, and the Doge department is just a hark back to the Venetian black nobility where they had a Doge. So I just find that crazy.
They wanted a Temple of Solomon. I was just going to add, even I'm seeing videos now come out from the left See, this is the thing. They fooled us into being, team A, team B, red, blue, sports. It's like, stop, And I've seen some of the comments from the left come out, and I think I'd agree with them. Like TikTok videos. Yanis Varoufakis, he just published something. Why should everyone be on alert for Musk? He says we need to be cautious of Musk because he, along with other tech giants, has created a new form of capitalism, cloud capital, that replaces profits with rent and feeds parasitically on traditional capitalism labor. This new system is not just a minor shift, but a monstrous parasite, exponentially larger than the traditional capitalist structure, which, with figures like Musk, Gates, Google, wielding unprecedented power over both the economy and politics. And it's like the left are saying it about Trump, but they weren't saying it about Biden and Harris. And I've just been, the past number of guests that I've interviewed, Jacob Nordengard was saying how the 1960s left movement was flipped, right? And now it's pro-corporate, pro-globalist. Mm-hmm. And now they've done it with the right. So they can just flip left and right for the same goal. And MAGA, I mean, what did the guys say? My pessimism is unbearable. Too bad. This is reality. This is reality. So
it started with Trump's populism. I remember saying they're trying to, flip the polls. He would, in the 2015 or whatever, when white blue collar workers were wanting him, and he was talking about labor and stuff like that. Yeah, they definitely did. But as far as that list of people you just rattled off and the commentary, that folds right into a sovereign wealth fund, I think, because I have books up here on tax exempt foundations, and we've talked about this kind of thing before. I think at least touched on it. You don't just trace you don't have title to everything. You can't look at a big bank account and say, oh, the Rothschilds are the richest people in the world. This stuff is behind the scenes, and a lot of it comes from the government, either directly or like Elon Musk and all his subsidies, or even just the fact that tax exempt foundations don't have to pay taxes. That doubles your wealth right there. So I think all that stuff goes hand in hand.
Yeah, and I wonder what they're going to put in there, because we've been looking at some of the things they've discussed over the past few years. We've talked about Bitcoin, cryptos, natural asset companies, which would be federal land. And you just wonder what's going to be put in there and what's that going to actually look like for citizens. They'll say this is for you, but does it exempt you from having access to land? Or, I'd be really concerned about that, because my suspicion is it's not going to be good for you guys.
It might fold into the AI thing. So I think he had part of the executive orders or the rollbacks or whatever were to take away Biden's protections, or I'm not saying Biden was really protecting anything. It might have been just a setup, but to take and say that it should be open source, it should be shared, whatever. If they monopolize the investing, and people, and NVIDIA took a big hit, as you talked about on your show, that's a buying opportunity for some people. And if you look at like Google and all that, they were fostered by the government's research, backdoor money. And then they became Google, Yahoo, Amazon, whatever. Those are the dominant players. There is no competition for any of that stuff. So, and it looks like it's a free market. They don't say it's a government entity, but I think that's one way they can take the sovereign wealth thing and AI, and, it's a facade that it's more freedom, and it's really just monopolizing it for those few private people who are probably also face jobs, but they're the ones who are going to control it, and they're not going to tell us about it. That's why I think his executive orders about gutting the federal government, he's giving blanket permission for people to resign and get 8 months severance, and motivating them by saying things are going to be worse. You're going to have to come to the office more often. You're going to have fewer benefits. Like, take it now. He's not talking about they talk a little bit about deregulation, not talking so much about shrinking the government, but taking out the middle, which to me means two things will happen. The power will get centralized on the top there, and they're cleaning out all the old bureaucrats who have been around forever. And unless they're actually going to shrink the size of it, they're going to cause some chaos, like in Argentina. They're going to cause some problems. So then they're going to say, oh, well, we have to fix this. They'll put in automation. They'll put in their own guys. So I feel like it's all part of really, it's just a fascism, very sophisticated fascism.
I
We're crossing swords, right? I just wanted to add something about the sovereign wealth fund as well that came to when I was thinking about it. Is if you look at how Norway do it, Norway's is about 1.7 trillion, and this is the one they used as their example. And what Norway do is they put in excess revenues from their petroleum, but what they actually do with that is 40% of it's invested in the stock market. So if you want to prop up the stock market going forwards, as it goes into this potential collapse moment, a sovereign wealth fund will allow them to basically get the US government to start buying up stocks. So that's one potential reason for this. Just being conspiratorial, but it makes sense to me that they're going to have to, at some point, start buying stocks outright like they do in Japan just to prop this Ponzi scheme up.
And crypto too, probably.
Yes, and just on the Doge lines, I just got more material here I want to share. I click on, okay, here we go. See, as we speak, CJ Hopkins tweets a photo of Alex Soros and says, if you're one of the many outraged that some of us are criticizing Trump, Musk, and the Doge thing, well, feel free to save this tweet and dig it back out in February 2029 when the new Democrat administration turns Doge over to Alex Soros and his pals. So there's that.
Is anyone else just not tired of this, though? Like, you're either in one camp or the other, and
right.
Somebody has to be real. They can't both be fake. And it's like, they can both be fake.
Of course.
They can both be on the same team.
Yeah. And what you guys, this was interesting. Palantir is valued more highly than Lockheed, Northrop Grumman, and L3Harris combined, despite having 2% of the combined revenues. And I was just saying, it's like, all of the legacy systems are being put down, right? Legacy alternative media, legacy foreign policy, like USAID, that stuff, legacy military industrial complex. I know, what do we call it now? The digital military techno industrial complex, military industrial complex 2.0, because, it's Palantir now, it's Doge, it's SpaceX, it's all that stuff. And I thought I thought this was interesting. Speaking of the whole Trump North American Union stuff, Warzone reports that RC-135 Rivet's joint surveillance jet just flew unprecedented mission off Mexico. 2 sorties in the past 2 days. I think they were really high up, surveilling a place that sits adjacent to a notorious cartel hotspot. And then you've got Mexican cartels targeting Border Patrol agents with kamikaze drones, explosives, amid Trump crackdown. It's kind of like you're starting to see the heat. Things get hotter amidst this rhetoric of going after the cartels. And these pretexts, these are all pretexts, migration, cartels, tariffs, for the solution, which is North American integration. So that's that. And then
the digital ghetto.
And this, I think you said that before you even saw this. I pulled up this headline. Yeah. Mexico's famously tedious bureaucracy may finally be getting a digital update. So Mexico is now getting on, getting up to speed with their technocracy as Canada is, and as is the United States. And then I found this article from UN just a couple days ago, empowering parliaments to shape our digital future. And you go down, you read between the lines, and it says, it also, blah, 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 blah. It emphasizes that safe, secure, trustworthy digital technologies require effective global governance. So it's like basically digital technology requires world government. That's basically.
But that's also why they're getting rid of all the federal employees, I think. They'll get rid of them and just replace them with iPads or whatever, to use the McDonald's analogy. If you can have one person control 100 jobs if you have AI, kind of, not even big time AI.
Said, sorry, man. Okay, that's what Sam Altman said to Congress as well, and Elon Musk has both said it. That actually, And when it comes to AI, it's an existential threat. And existential threats like pandemics and nuclear weapons need global solutions where we have some kind of treaties. And that is how it's going to come through, I think. They'll say, if we don't do this, AI is going to kill you all. It's going to... And I don't think that's possible. I think these are fear-monger stories and narratives to get people to go along with that. I want you two to give me your take. Do you believe that AI could become conscious? Because that's really what they're trying to push out there. And I don't believe anything man-made could have anything akin to the divine spark. It's kind of like saying a table could become conscious to me. I know you can with AI, you can make it mimic human beings, but for me, I find the narratives insane. But what do you two think?
I'd agree. I mean, I think after my long talk with Jacob Nordengard and others, like his book Rockefeller Controlling the Game is really good. He goes into insane detail and explains how, we talked about atomic weapons, climate change, the virus threat, and now the AI threat. And it's like he made the point, those are all invisible enemies. Radiation, you can't see it. CO2, you can't see it. The virus, you can't see it. The AI, well, I guess you can see it. I don't know. And so they just pretty much hype everything. I mean, they're liars. They're psychopaths who are... And I told them at the beginning of the interview, it's like, basically, they're spending a century and so much time, energy, and money in attempting to concoct absurd, stupid pretexts for us to give them global domination. And it's kind of like, same thing with AI. It's just fear-mongering. And most of the stuff that they do, that they say that this stuff can do, it can't. Like, I think atomic weapons are real, but I don't believe, we can have a nuclear winter. It'll just blow stuff up and we can recover. But so anyways, yeah, I'm not afraid of.
Yes, a few things on that. I think I don't believe in that ultimate AI thing, the artificial general intelligence, or at least the consciousness element of it. One thing is that the threat of that is what drove the two Harris brothers on Joe Rogan to say, because that's so super scary, we need to cap public access to AI right here, right now, and anybody who open sources further development should go to jail. That's what the proposal is, and they're writing the proposals for Senate. So it's definitely a way to keep us from accessing any kind of like more advanced AI. I think that I noticed this with my fire situation. A couple of things. That one, we all thought that it was arson from on high, because where it started was a place that would not really be accessible to somebody. And the power was off. So it looked like it was an electrical fire, but it couldn't have been. And I later realized that the power up in the mountains was not shut off. And even though the wires weren't snapped, they supposedly were arcing. So I thought, wow, I actually am now leaning towards it was an electrical fire in the end, but the feeling of omnipotence. So I think the powers that be are the ones that put out the conspiracy theories that it was a lot of, super high level arson, because it's so demoralizing to think that you have absolutely no power whatsoever. And then go down from 30,000 or 10,000 feet to, microscopic. I always said with COVID, trillions of invisible monsters are everywhere and they're trying to kill us all. That's why you're wearing a mask. And they said the same thing with the toxins. I walk outside and people are like, you're living in your house? You're not wearing a mask? Don't you know there are trillions of invisible monsters everywhere trying to kill us all? And I'm like, I don't know. How do I know that? I'm going to have to either believe you, or I'm going to have to get this little gauge thingy and try to figure it out. And I also, in the end, I feel like I don't think the powers that be or anyone really understands the true nature of consciousness. To me, it's like the greatest evidence of God. It's the fact that consciousness is self-awareness, and consciousness like that exists, like they can't find it. So how are they going to reproduce it?
No, I would just add to that. I mean, from a biblical worldview, they talk about consciousness. It's like only God, he's the source. Like it's a personal God, and he created our spirits supernaturally somehow. We cannot create consciousness. We can create like a Frankenstein mimic copy of it. And even what you mentioned about the suit, I lived in the former Soviet Union in Kazakhstan, and in the winter, it's like you have these massive smokestacks in the city, which coal is coming out of, and sometimes you can actually, it covers the snow, so it's like black snow. And I asked a local there, like, aren't you guys worried about breathing in this coal? And they're like, whatever, waving their hand at me. And I think about it, I'm like, well, they've lived there. They're in their middle age, older age, and they're fine. So it's kind of like, I'm not saying go breathe in, coal, but it's kind of like not as bad as they tell us.
And a lot of the real hysteria comes from this need to never die, which I also think is a function of not having faith.
Yeah,
it's like, this is the only life, and you've got to be super freaking paranoid about every little thing. So some of these gals, they won't like color their hair because they're like, oh, it's going to kill me. I'm like, death is going to kill you. You are dying. We're all dying. You're going to die.
That's it. That's the big fear that they always play on, is that, you're going to die. You're going to die. And it's like, yeah, we're all going to die. So does that mean that we give up all of our rights and freedoms and live like slaves? I mean, I'd rather live 10 years free than 50 years a slave, or 1,000 years a slave, or 10,000. So yeah, I think that's what people have lost sight of. It's this fear of death, and that comes from a lack of a greater perspective on life and a lack of, faith in something else. Because of course, if you do have a biblical perspective, then you've got eternal life. Anyways, if that's what you want, and I always say, if someone offered me another 1,000 years here, I wouldn't take it. I don't want 1,000 years here. I'm quite happy with what I'm going to get given. But yeah, let's move on a little bit, because I've got a lot on the AI stuff, and it's huge right now, especially with the recent announcement of Operation Stargate. So let's share this one with Larry Ellison. This guy is creepy, in my opinion. But let's see what he had to say.
Thank you, Mr. President. One of the most exciting things we're working on, using the tools that Sam and Masa are providing, is our cancer vaccine. It's very interesting. Turns out, I'll be quick, all of our cancers, cancer tumors, little fragments of those tumors float around in your blood. So you can do early cancer detection. If you can do it using AI, you can do early cancer detection with a blood test. And using AI to look at the blood test, you can find the cancers that are actually seriously threatening the person. So we can, again, cancer diagnosis using AI has the promise of just being a simple blood test. Then beyond that, once we gene sequence that cancer tumor, you can then vaccinate the person, design a vaccine for every individual person to vaccinate them against that cancer. And you can make that vaccine, that mRNA vaccine, you can make that robotically, again, using AI in about 48 hours. So imagine early cancer detection, the development of a cancer vaccine for your particular cancer aimed at you, and have that vaccine available in 48 hours. This is the promise of AI and the promise of the future.
Well, I don't like that promise. And I certainly won't be having any designer vaccines, but I found this one almost like a humiliation ritual for the MAGA crowd, that literally they built him up like he's coming back in, and everything that happened last time, he didn't mean it, he was tricked. And literally on the second day, he's got Larry Ellison there saying, guys, we've got a load more mRNA coming your way. And and actually I've got another video just to give viewers an indication of who Larry Ellison is, because this is the guy who actually runs Oracle, which is a company deeply tied with the CIA. That was their first contractor. And Larry Ellison, he was the guy who, after 9/11, was the first one to come out and say that we need a national ID, a database with mandatory retina scans. And he's the guy now pushing it. Sorry, guys, I'm just pushing AI. So I'm just trying to find the video. Oh, here we go. So this is the same guy. And it gives you a bit more of a flavor about what he is interested in.
The police will be on their best behavior, because citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly cars have cameras on squad car or someplace. But those kind of applications using AI, we can use AI, and we're using AI to monitor the video. So if that altercation had occurred in Memphis, the chief of police would be immediately notified. It's not people that are looking at those cameras. It's AI that's looking at the camera. No. You can't do this. It would be like a shooting. That's going to be an event that's immediately, an alarm is going to go off. It's going to be, and we're going to have supervision. In other words, every police officer is going to be supervised at all times. And the supervision will, and if there's a problem, AI will report the problem and report it to the appropriate person, whether it's the sheriff or the chief or whomever we need to take control of the situation.
So what he's talking about there is building out the AI technocracy and putting cameras, and he goes on to discuss also putting them in schools. So all students will be monitored constantly. And of course, they're using the fear again. They're saying about police doing something that they shouldn't be doing, or students getting shot up in a school because someone takes a gun. But the AI will be able to capture it and keep you all safe. He's talking about the existential fear of cancer and death. Don't worry, the AI will fix it and we'll create some new vaccines. So it's going back to what we just said, right? It's this fear. And what Trump announced, for those that missed it, was a $500 billion investment in AI. And also Sam Altman was there too, who we can talk about. But I'd love to get your thoughts on this one.
Mike, your pessimism is unbearable.
I don't think you played the full clip about if a cop has to go to the bathroom.
I think he's turned it off, no?
I don't have that one because it was before he said that. But yeah, he says that when cops go to the bathroom, we tell them at Oracle the camera's turned off, but actually we don't turn it off. We just keep the data and put it to one side. And if it's needed, then we can bring it back online with a court order. So he actually admits that his company lies, which is, yeah, this guy is astounding. And like I said, he was the guy who came out after 9/11 and said we need a national database where we monitor everyone, a national ID, mandatory retina scans, and he's all about big technocracy. His company is named after a CIA project that he worked on before he made his company. And I just don't see how this is going to be better than the CIA, or I think it's going to be worse. Yeah, I think where America's heading right now is pretty dangerous. And transhumanism is certainly a key part of it as well, because the AI technocracy, it's all about changing you. You know, it's about adding these things to you. And if Operation Warp Speed was the first big push towards transhumanism, then I'd say we're going into the second big push with Operation Stargate.
Yeah.
If you're interested in the Oracle thing, the current CEO, Safra Katz, is she's an Israeli-American billionaire, banker, and technology executive. One of the places she worked before was called Hyperion Technologies. And I don't know if I'm doing actually a review today of the book, The Fall of Hyperion. It's a sci-fi novel about AI kind of controlling the entire universe. And I think they have a deep, weird, family of intelligence behind it. So this stuff goes back way long ago, but not only did he say that about like cops, that the camera would never go off. The idea that these cameras, even when they're off, will continue to record and store the information. And if there's a court order, it can be retrieved. That applies to all of us. And that's what we're talking about here. Absolutely perfect.
Well, he let it slip because he said citizens will be on their best behavior. So that suggests that you're getting monitored too. Yeah. It's not just police officers, it's you.
You also had, I think, we haven't gotten to annexing Gaza, but before, since we're still on Trump and executive orders and tariffs in Canada, I have one more funny video I want to show.
I like how you just keep lightening the mood for us all. How can people call you a doomer, Hrvoje?
Right?
Gallows humor.
Here is, I thought this was funny. You guys let me, it's Canadian. So it's the Canadians making fun of the tariffs. They're shopping in a Canadian supermarket. So here's.
What the hell are you doing?
What?
That's Heinz ketchup.
So?
It's American. Buy French's. It's Canadian. We're in a trade war, you traitor.
I'm sorry, I didn't know.
Mrs. Butterworth? You were gonna buy American maple syrup?
Oh. Okay, that costs way more.
So does freedom. What the hell is that?
My Timmy's. What? Timmy's is Canadian.
Not anymore. It's Brazilian now. Buy second cup.
Oof. Maybe we just don't buy coffee for a while.
That's fair.
Okay, what restaurant chains are safe?
Boston Pizza, New York Fries. Basically, if there's an American city in the name, it's probably Canadian. Cheetos?
No.
Hawkins.
I like my cheesies soft.
Morris, no time for soft cheesies.
Not my Charmin. Look, I need that. I'm sensitive.
This is like wiping your arse with the Charter of Rights. Try Royale. If it sounds English or French, it's probably Canadian. What else is on your list?
Chips,
Hickory sticks,
orange juice,
Clamato juice,
Old El Paso taco kit,
Kraft dinner,
Frosted Flakes,
Kraft dinner,
and Kraft dinner.
2 boxes of Kraft dinner.
I thought Kraft was owned by Heinz.
Yeah, but KD is made in Canada. Ketchup bad, cheesy does good. What do you drink?
Jack Daniels?
Crown Royal.
Right, because if it sounds English or French,
It's probably Canadian.
Right.
Welcome to the fight, soldier.
We all have to do our part. There's only one winner in a trade war.
That'll be 312.32.
I'm gonna have to put everything but the KD back.
Loblaws.
Anyways, I thought it was funny.
That's a good one.
Music.
Yeah, so he put 25% tariffs on Mexico, 25% on Canada, and 10% on China. But the ones on Canada and Mexico, he revoked pretty quickly. The stock market did start to
Because
reject.
Canada and Mexico both agreed to send 10,000 troops to the border.
That's what we got told.
I mean, this is part of the. If you ask me, you got the minutia, but it's part of the North American Union dealing, and who's gonna. It's the art of the deal, right? Steve Foy.
They'll train those soldiers to interoperability right there. I think that's what that's all about. Yeah, I agree. North American Union for sure. I wonder if Ted Cruz will be part of that, because I think Ted Cruz, he was born to his parents were both Canadian when he was born in Canada. So now he's American. And I think he had a Mexican angle too. Maybe it's just his name.
Cuban. Was it Cuban angle?
Is he Cuban? I know Rubio was Cuban. So that's another thing. Our Secretary of State now is a Cuban guy. And that folds into my expectation that we're looking at regional hegemony.
Cruz's father was born and raised in Cuba.
Wait, is he Cuban? Okay. Well, it's just, south of the border. Latin America, let's call it. But I feel like there's not just the North American Union, but the regional hegemony that they're going for. And I saw it with Biden also.
Do you think that they're heading towards a global army or global NATO? Like it's going to expand now? Because I know that Denmark came out recently and said that they're going to allow the US to put more military presence in Greenland. So that, it's like Trump's already managed to move a lot of chess pieces. And I don't know why you would need more military presence in Greenland. Like I can't figure out what threat they think's going to be up there. Even Hitler didn't bother with Greenland. He just said, screw it. No one cares.
Bases, I assume, like air base or privacy.
Haven't you guys played the game of Risk? No.
Yeah. Does Greenland have value and risk? Does somebody want to take
jump
Greenland
to Europe?
Okay, there you go. Reykjavik or whatever, that's Iceland. But there's Trump in his first term. I remember laughing. I was like, it's crazy that people are giving him big snaps for insisting that Europe increase military spending. Like, where do you think that's going to go? If they've got it, they're gonna spend it. They're going to use it.
That takes us to the new military bases that are almost certainly going to be developing in Gaza. But before we do that, I just wanted to share one on Sam Altman as well, because he was there at the announcement of Operation Stargate. And this video is him talking about how we're going to have to renegotiate the social contract. So again, it's about changing the republic, I think, in the US.
I still expect, although I don't know what, and this is over a long period of time, this is not like next year or, a year year after that kind of thing. But over a long period of time, I still expect that there will be some change required to the social contract, given how powerful we expect this technology to be. I'm not a believer that there won't be any jobs. I think we always find new things to do. But I do think like the whole structure of society itself will, be up for some degree of debate and reconfiguration.
So that was the first one, but I also just wanted to share one of his blog posts. I'll just read a little bit of it because Sam Altman is a transhumanist and is now working with the president. And it says, we are already in the phase of coevolution. The AIs affect, and infect us. And then we improve the AI. We build more computing power and run the AI on it, and it figures out how to build even better chips. This probably cannot be stopped, as we have learned. Scientific advancement eventually happens if the laws of physics do not prevent it. More important than that, unless we destroy ourselves first, superhuman AI is going to happen. Genetic enhancement is going to happen. And brain-machine interfaces are going to happen. It is a failure of human intelligence and human arrogance to assume that we will never build things smarter than ourselves. And he goes on to say the merge, which he talks about human beings merging with technology, will take lots of forms. We could plug electrodes into our brains, or we could all just become really close friends with a chatbot. But I think a merge is probably our best case scenario. If two different species, talking about humans and these AI, artificial intelligence, both want the same thing and only one can have it, the dominant species on the planet and beyond, they are going to have conflict. We should all want one team where all members care about the well-being of everything else. Although the merge has already begun, it's going to be a lot weirder. We will be the first species ever to design our own descendants. My guess is that we can either be the biological bootloader for digital intelligence and then fade into an evolutionary tree branch, or we can figure out what a successful merge looks like. And then he goes on to say it's going to happen sooner than we think, and OpenAI, which is where he works, is going to be a key part of that. So that's the agenda of people like that, and that is what they're now pushing right at the center of government and spending. And I don't know why no one's talking about it. It seems to me like the biggest problem of our time is going to be they're going to try and force us to merge with a machine. And a lot of the things that are happening in the world right now, people talk about the spraying, the mRNA vaccines. That to me is the merge happening without people explicitly knowing that they are being, they're having their DNA and bodies messed with. Any comments?
I think they are doing stuff, but I don't think it's as, the shed. I think a lot of that stuff is somewhat minor. And I think they often need they want you to opt in to it, like with the COVID passes. And so I'm not at this stage too afraid of stuff that they're like spraying. And yeah, it's bad, but I think it's all going to fail. I couldn't find the clip. I found something about them growing like organoid brain mass and then creating like computers, chips or something. Like they're trying to find ways to make the Neuralink work because, the way they've been doing it now, jamming it into monkeys' heads, the animals die. And now they're looking to like organoid type computers that could merge with our flesh. And it's just, I don't see it really.
I'm
working.
thinking like I keep being reminded of that Golem myth. Is the Golem like a like a Frankenstein or like a non-organic then gets that spark of life, whatever. Yikes.
You know what I think it is? I think it's the other way around. They know that they can't put the spark of life or consciousness into machines. So they're going to add the machine to things that have consciousness and the spark of life.
Sure, yeah.
And then they'll just try and control this hybrid, which will be us or our children.
Yeah. That makes more.
That seems to me. I mean, that's the only way they could do it. And then I think it feeds into all kinds of craziness because if you think about, there's a whole branch of transhumanism because it's kind of like a religious thing, this transhuman movement. They believe they're going to become gods. And then there's the whole idea that they're going to be able to usher in some kind of antichrist who can like rule over all of these transhumans and it will have access to all of the knowledge. Because I was thinking about AI and all of the data mining they've done. They've just stole all that intellectual property right. They've mined the internet completely. And it's kind of like the Library of Alexandria. Like, it's all going to be fed into this AI. And maybe that's why they gave us so much room to run on the internet, was to help us build that out.
Go ahead, Hrvoje.
I found it. Should I show it?
Yeah, go for it.
The video. Let me open file. Where is it? While I look for it, you can continue.
Okay, I'll tell you what I think about this. Couple of things. One thing that Biden did put in there, and it was probably overturned by Trump, but it doesn't matter. He was talking about how AI should be sensitive to DEI, so it's creating a hyper reality. So you would, if a certain ethnic group searches for a certain kind of thing, instead of YouTube or whatever prompting them for more of that, they take into account that would be stereotyping. So they are trying to create a hyper reality. So if this is the Library of Alexandria, it's going to be distorted. It'll be unrecognizable unless you went back to all the base information, which they will probably be no longer permitted to access. So they'll take it, they morph it, and then they say, oh yeah, our bad, copyright, whatever, you can have it back, or we'll just disperse it back into the universe. Another thing that they always do is they usher this stuff in by promising a compassionate thing. So you have transgender people, obviously, is one way to really get people to just, reshape their bodies. And then you also have, this came out of the Iraq War, a lot of prosthetic advancement, but also they'll show, I remember last year, the year before on the Super Bowl, they showed VR or whatever, virtual reality of super handicapped children, and they were able to enter this world with basically a digital twin. And then I know we're going to talk a little bit about Gaza. I have a show from a year ago that I said, oh, the U.S. is going to go into Gaza, and this is what they're going to say, although I don't think they're saying this, but I knew it was coming. The humanitarian failures of Israel in Gaza, like they went to give them food and they accidentally shot 800 Palestinians. I don't know how to handle this, and now Trump's like, oh yeah, we have to go into Gaza. My guess is that there'll be a humanitarian angle to that. But we can talk more about that in a second.
For sure.
Yeah, I found it real quick. By the way, here's the Risk game board. There's Greenland.
Yay!
You need it to get into Europe. That's important.
Yeah, look at all those lines.
Where's Central America is covered under North America. So there you go. For Risk, that explains everything. Panama to Greenland. It really does.
Madagascar has a little bit of value there.
You need to get those bonus points once you got North America. The bonus soldiers. Anyways,
Indonesia is going to matter.
Final Spark Bio computing.
Sam Altman has an Indonesian passport, by the way.
Oh, there you go. So here's the video. This is crazy. It's called Final Spark.
What you see here is not just a virtual butterfly in a video game. It's something far more extraordinary. What makes this butterfly special is that it's controlled by a lab-grown mini-human brain, remotely connected over the internet. Sensory input and world information from this 3D virtual environment are transmitted to this brain organoid via specific electrical and chemical stimulations to mimic sensory input. This brain organoid, composed of 10,000 neurons grown in the laboratory from induced pluripotent stem cells, interprets the input and sends back its signals, controlling the butterfly's movements in real time. It's as if the brain itself is living within this simulated world. This is the first time this has been done continuously over the internet. This entire experience is powered by a WebGL simulation, accessible through any web browser, making a virtual world for the brain just a URL away.
They made that pretty satanic, right?
So I can't even
the colors.
I can't even compute like what's going on there. It's just too Frankenstein for me.
Is it just on and off? Is it just binary? If it's simply electrical impulse, or if the brain organoid is making choices,
no way.
I think that's what they're working towards.
Yeah, but on and off, that seems. I wonder if they're exaggerating the importance of that.
But
I'll believe it when we see it.
But the fact that they're just like doing this stuff is just like, what are we doing?
Yeah, no, it's outrageous, and that's our money. That is government money.
Your sovereign wealth fund. There it goes.
Yeah, Mike, what did you say? I didn't hear you.
I was just saying, I'll believe it when we see it. You know, I just don't. I don't think it's like I think what they're gonna do is just lots of experiments, and I think medical ethics will just disappear. There'll be lots of people who are damaged along the way, and they'll just be collateral damage because they've got a greater agenda, and it's transhumanism, and they'll stop at nothing to get there because they believe that once they get to that level, they can just enslave everything. All of nature will be controlled by them in this kind of smart grid that they're gonna put over everything, and we have to be a part of it. So at some point, there's going to have to be more events that force people into it because there'll be a lot of people who say no. I'm not doing it.
There's some serious medical ethics failures right now anyway when it comes to life and death. So one is there's a lot of scandal, which a friend of mine told me many, many years ago, do not put organ donation on your driver's license because then they don't have to ask you, and they cannot harvest organs from a living being. So they invented the term brain death, but now it's coming out that there's scandals about people being alive. And I mean, they are alive, but that like conscious, like really robbing people of their organs. So that's just that kind of thing seems extremely unethical to me. And also IVF, I was pretty horrified when Newt Gingrich, who's a Catholic convert, suggested that Catholics would be, as if IVF, that they would be in favor of that, as if IVF is the same as not having an abortion, like it's just life at any cost. Because when my son who has Down syndrome was a baby, I absolutely observed a disproportionate number of other special needs kids, birth defects, whatever, of people who did IVF. And I pointed it out to a doctor and he said, yeah, that's true, but that's just because older people get that. I'm like, I don't know. When you have 6 babies coming out at once, you're going to have some casualties there. But there's no ethics there in my, I feel like the medical ethics. Oh, and I think Anthony Fauci's wife is the most senior medical ethicist in America.
Yeah, I think we've got some strange times coming. And do you guys agree that there's some like, beyond just the material side of this and the control side, there's some kind of, I would say, like a cult spiritual side to it all as well. Like whenever you hear the people speaking the transhumanist movement, whether it's Nick Bostrom or Sam Altman, any of those people, they talk about it in spiritual terms. And I can't imagine it's going to be good spiritualism. I think it's going to be a cult at the end. Do you see that too? Like they're taking us towards some kind of new agey thing with it all?
Well, what about that Elon Musk stuff and the weird imagery and the Novus Ordo type, whatever, when Trump came in and having his little kid on his shoulders with his hands in the shape of a cross in a church? I thought, I don't know if they're toying with us or if it's real. Yeah.
Images from Temple of the Solomon. Something like that.
Let me show you I guess I can't. So I had... Gabriel made me a AI generated image while we were doing the show, and I really don't know how to get this up there. But anyway, maybe I'll just tweet it and you can look at it. I don't know. Anyway, I'll see if I can find it for you. But it looks just like that picture that you just set up, except for it didn't actually show Satan.
I just had a few, clips, images on Israel. We haven't really covered that as much.
Yeah.
No? Should we?
Yeah. Go for it.
Sharing my screen again.
So I just put that in the DM, Mike, if you want to look at it, or Hrvoje.
Oh, let me see.
It just reminds me of that picture that you just.
Well. Can
you go in your messages, Hrvoje, and look at that?
Chat.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Hold on. Let me see.
I don't care.
Oh, is it on X?
I kind of don't like.
I put it in Twitter.
Showing any private messages.
I totally agree. I just thought that too. I was like, forget it. Never mind. I can.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
Oh, I don't care. Anyway,
I got it.
I just tweeted it to everybody. Everybody's going to be like, whatever.
I think that's probably more what it will look like. Although the multicolored stuff will actually be, that multicolored stuff that'll really be safe.
So the idea, the question was, what is the can AI have the creative spark of a human being? And that's what it showed, which reminds me of your Satan picture.
There you go. Well, it's just taking inputs and making outputs. So I don't think the AI is even, it's like a machine.
Yeah, that good.
You're just pushing buttons.
Yeah.
And it's not.
It's aggregating. It's a search and aggregation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's
search
aggregating. I like to call it automated intelligence. By the way,
yeah.
I found some photos. They weren't the best to illustrate. This was my view from my apartment in Kazakhstan. You can see the smokestack.
What?
You see that?
What is that thing?
What's the UFO?
Yeah,
no, that's the light in the living room. But imagine those like.
It really looks like a UFO. It's like, Hrvoje, you're not noticing that? Did something come out of that?
Hrvoje, if you put this on X, there'd be like hundreds of thousands of
conspiracies.
No, but that's
you
the
have to tweet that. It's crazy.
That's just the light in the living room.
Just for fun, just to freak people out.
But the smokestack, those are all over the city, and you see the smoke coming out. Here's a second photo. Now you see the smoke. Like first half of the photo is the ice on the window, but that massive smoke.
It's like this in Poland as well, Hrvoje. We've got those smokestacks everywhere, and in the city you get that smog just hanging over it with the coal.
Here's a personal photo. I thought this was funny with my kid. I'm like modeling the baby carrier. Look at that.
That looks great.
Go for a walk in -40 with your kid. Nothing's going to happen. All this worrying about safety today is hardcore. Anyways.
Well, we had that conversation in the car. We were saying, like, even if, like, they are poisoning us with the spraying and all that stuff, just think about how people lived going back hundreds of years and all of the toxins. Like, our bodies are pretty good at filtering this stuff out. I think the key is just to keep your body healthy. Like, don't add poison upon top of poison. But we are made to filter things out. So, my granddad worked with asbestos. Which killed tons of people in the UK, and he worked with it for like 15 years. So I think we need to not be so paranoid. I agree with you, Hrvoje, that we will filter a lot of that crap out, and it's not a death sentence just because they're doing. I mean, we've been poisoned all of our lives. We lived in cities with all this smog, the plastics, the lead paints, the copper pipes the lead pipes for our water. Like, we have always been poisoned. So I think you have to trust this creation that we've got, our bodies, to do a lot of the work. Just help it along by being healthy.
One of the biggest reasons for chemtrails is the stuff they actually put in the fuel is worse than ever, and it attracts the moisture and it stays in the air and everything. And nobody ever really talks about chemtrails. Now all of a sudden people are allowed to talk about it, I think, because the solution is to restrict air travel. And I've been tweeting, if you go to my profile, Hrvoje, while you're up there, I just pinned it so you could see that. I don't know how easy it's going to get there. There you go. Thank you. So I had put this up. That was 2019. I started noticing that they were looking for global governance of air travel. I later realized they were trying to cut down on air travel. And now we've had these plane crashes, which I would say was maybe the only legitimate I think it was probably on purpose, but the last time we had something like this was to, I think, actually assassinate a 9/11 widow. But the last one that was legit before that, I think, was like 19 years ago. So we see these plane crashes, and I think it all folds into restricting air travel, which I think they're going to use in part the argument that those chemtrails and the smoke and stuff in the air, like, we've got to get rid of it. But of course, they'll keep the military stuff up. They'll keep the private jets up there. It's the democratized air travel that's going to go, I think.
Yeah, I think that is the plan. I can't. There were developments I can't think of recently, but yeah, it's going to be harder for average folks to travel. And plus, you're getting the exit entry systems coming in. Yeah, Europe, UK, Canada, USA, where you have to ask permission to leave your country and then permission to be received. So they're putting in the checkpoints in place for air.
Which may be what those 10,000 troops on the north and south border could be about here.
Real quick, this is Harrison Smith talking about Trump. It's kind of funny, but here's
almost like you can go back and forth where it's just like, Trump is ending all the foreign aid. Everybody's like, yeah. And it's like, yeah, except for Israel. And so, what was that last part? I said that Trump is reasserting free speech in universities. They're not going to be biased anymore. Everybody's like, yeah. And it's like, except anti-Semitism, you can't talk about Jews. It's like, sorry, what was that last part? It's like everything that Trump is doing that's good has a little carve out, a little caveat, a little dent in it. Just the size of anti-Semitism. It's kind of annoying. I have to be honest with you.
Harrison, your pessimism is unbearable. There's just a few clips of you guys maybe have seen this, the clips from with Netanyahu.
I do see a long-term ownership position, and I see it bringing great stability to that part of the Middle East and maybe the entire Middle East. And everybody I've spoken to, this was not a decision made lightly. Everybody I've spoken to loves the idea of the United States owning that piece of land, developing and creating thousands of jobs with something
that smirk on Netanyahu's face. I posted the other day. Is it just me, or every time he talks in the video that he tweets out, he's got like this smirk, like he's done one. Someone said it's
Look
Duper's
what
delight.
I accomplished. Yeah, and you want to put me in jail? Nobody's getting this done. I've been saying for a long time they wanted to make Gaza Disney, like literally, which is super like offensive, but I think it's panning out.
Yeah, look.
In a really magnificent area that nobody would know. Nobody can look because all they see is death and destruction.
Look at that smirk on Netanyahu.
And demolished buildings.
Oh yeah, he can't stop laughing. Oh my gosh, that's awful.
Terrible sight. I've studied it. I've studied this very closely over a lot of months, and I've seen it from every different angle. And it's a very, very dangerous place to be. And it's only going to get worse. And I think this is an idea that's gotten tremendous.
That's crazy.
I'm talking about from the highest level of leadership, gotten tremendous praise. And if the United States can help to bring stability and peace in the Middle East, we'll do that.
And some of the memes.
They moved the camera away.
You guys saw this? This was. And then some of the memes, Trump Tower amongst the rebel in Gaza.
Yes, exactly. Did you guys?
Dave DeCamp, someone got her money's worth.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Mr. Sausage.
Did you guys see how people were framing this in the Trump savior alternative media camp?
No.
I've got a few takes if you don't mind me sharing. So this was the, where are we? I'll come back to that in a second. So this was Clinton Russell. He said that he believes that maybe that Trump is actually negotiating live with Netanyahu. That Netanyahu had no idea that this was going to come, and Trump. I know. Because I wanted to know, like, how are people going to respond to this in that crowd that have really been pushing Trump? And apparently, Bibi doesn't look too pleased. I thought he looked extremely pleased in that clip.
Oh, I think they panned away because he was like, couldn't stop smiling.
I'll show the video though, just so listeners can make their decision.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip. Responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded.
And the tweet was, "This is interesting. Bibi seems none too pleased as Trump talks about the US owning Gaza. I think he's negotiating against Netanyahu in real time." And then I found another one. This was Tom Luongo, and he posted Jacqueline Flores, and he said, "Why has
what Trump has proposed for the Palestinian people?"
Go on, Monica. Do you want to read it?
Yeah. What Trump has proposed for the Palestinian people does not fit the definition of ethnic cleansing and also represents fresh thinking on the subject. I have to comment on that. Okay. He goes on to say, "I'm prepared to debate anyone on this point. The fake news media is in overdrive. I have to say that it's a shame that the Muslim Brotherhood Soros complex has hijacked many layers of the Palestinian cause. Paying attention to the details of his statements earlier and to the extent that those statements will have bearing on his later actual actions, several things become clear." Keep going, Mike.
Yeah, Palestinians who wish to leave will be able to leave and return later after rebuilding has taken place. And the US will undertake in international law the responsibility of an occupying power in Palestine, which, regardless of any other factor overreaching scenario, is an improvement on the IDF. Now, that's not actually what Trump says. I've got the video here about what he's planning. And let's see what he actually said.
Think might accept Palestinians from Gaza?
Well, I think Jordan and Egypt will. I know they've spoken about it with you, and they say they're not going to accept. I say they will. But I think other countries will accept it also. I think that Gaza maybe is a demolition site right now. If you look at Gaza, it's all, I mean, there's hardly a building standing, and the ones that are going to collapse. You can't live in Gaza right now, and I think we need another location. I think it should be a location that's going to make people happy. You look over the decades, it's all death in Gaza. This has been happening for years. It's all death. If we can get a beautiful area to resettle people permanently in nice homes and where they can be happy and not be shot, not be killed, not be knifed to death like what's happening in Gaza. And right now you have in Gaza a very dangerous situation in terms of explosives all over the place, in terms of tunnels that nobody knows who's in the tunnel. The whole thing is a mess. And I think that if we can resettle, and I believe we can do it in areas where the leaders currently say no. I mean, I've been saying that with Mexico, having to do with the border and all of the things, and you saw what happened, 10,000 soldiers, and they're going to do a good job. I really believe that, and I believe Canada's going to do a good job also. They said the same thing, and then they did something much different than what you were hearing. This is a very, very difficult situation, but we're going to get it solved. I don't think people should be going back to Gaza. I think that Gaza has been very unlucky for them. They've lived like hell. They lived like you're living in hell. Gaza is not a place for people to be living. And the only reason they want to go back, and I believe this strongly, is because they have no alternative. What's the alternative? Go where? There's no other alternative. If they had an alternative, they'd much rather not go back to Gaza and live in a beautiful alternative that's safe.
The smirk.
Would Palestinians have the right to return to Gaza if they left while the rebuilding was happening?
It would be my hope that we could do something really nice, really good, where they wouldn't want to return. Why would they want to return? The place has been hell. It's been one of the meanest, toughest places on earth. And right now, it's I've seen every picture from every angle, better than if I were there. And nobody can live there. You can't live there. So if we can build them through massive amounts of money supplied by other people, very rich nations, and they're willing to supply it. If we can build something for them, and one of the countries, and it could be Jordan, and it could be Egypt, it could be other countries, and you could build 4 or 5 or 6 areas. It doesn't have to be one area, but you take certain areas and you build really good quality housing, like a beautiful town, like someplace where they can live and not die. Because Gaza is a guarantee that they're going to end up dying. The same thing's going to happen again.
There you go. That sounds like, it didn't sound to me like we're going to be resettling the Palestinians back there. That's not the message I took.
It sounds contradictory. He's like, we're going to remake Gaza. It's going to be wonderful, but they can't come back.
Not for the Palestinians.
Keep them out there. Okay, well, if they bring them, once you rebuild, bring them back. It's like, no, sorry. So you can't come back to your home, so.
But I just thought it was interesting, the response of the alt media. I mean, Ian Carroll as well did a video saying the same, that Bibi looked like he was uncomfortable and Trump was doing a live negotiation. I'm like,
he couldn't suppress his laughter.
I'm sorry. I've interviewed Joaquin Flores on the podcast. The mental gymnastics of some of these folks, the 5D chess and alt media, they get it wrong on BRICS. It's, there's a pattern here. BRICS, defending Trump, Bitcoin maxis. It's kind of like, yeah.
I mean, I'm not against, like we all said that Trump's done some positive things, but this is like, to do a 5D chess on this, it's like, no, it's pretty obvious what's happening. And I've never seen BB look so smug. Like, he was so happy.
No, he couldn't contain himself. So that tweet or whatever it was from Joaquin Flores that started out like, this is a new idea. I don't know if the three of us have talked about the Oded Yinon plan. Are you familiar with that? It
you
says strategy.
you introduced me to that.
Can I just read you this paragraph from the 80s? It says, Jordan constitutes an immediate strategic target in the short run, but not in the long run, for it does not constitute a real threat in the long run after its dissolution, the termination of the lengthy rule of King Hussein, and the transfer of power to the Palestinians in the short run. There's no chance Jordan will continue to exist in its present structure for a long time, and Israel's policy, both in war and in peace, ought to be directed at the liquidation of Jordan under the present regime and the transfer of power to the Palestinian majority. So Jordan has been where they wanted to send the Palestinians. It's this plan was written in the 80s, and they thought it was going to take 10 years. But Wesley Clark said the same thing. It'll take 10 years to square away these 7 countries. No, it takes 30, 40 years. But if you're focused and you go back and read both the Wesley Clark thing and this, you see that that's what's happening. It's not a new plan. It was the plan, and he's doing it.
Oops, sorry, guys. Yeah, I just wanted to show you just a few of the tweets as well while you're talking, Monica, about the international response. So Russia's already come out and said that this is not something they agree with. China, too. China says they're against Trump's plan. Saudi Arabia, that's a really big key ally to the US. They've said that they're committed to a Palestinian state, including the Strip, rules out normalization of diplomatic ties with Israel without that goal. And yeah, that's everyone. So I don't know. Do you think they're serious about this? Do you think it will actually go ahead, or do you think this is more bravado? It looks pretty legit.
I think it's going to move ahead. I mean, these are plans. Everything we're talking about: world government, third temple of Solomon, world building the city of man, and they got the momentum. They're doing it. Building that massive Beirut data center, second largest U.S. embassy. Talking about Cyrus Accords, they bringing together peace in the Middle East, and I think that's what.
Do you think it falls into some of those? Are the plans that we've looked at before towards like a war with Iran? Do you think that this is a strategic move for the military as well, or it's more related to securing more land for Israel on the American dollar?
I mean, it's both things. It's for Israel, but it's also to create the Middle Eastern Union, which they need. And then the religious implications, their occult religious implications for world government their temple, and it can include war with Iran. Like, there's many moving parts here, I think.
I agree. It's like you look at Ukraine, there was so much corruption there, billions of dollars, the IMF, Zelensky, but it is part of a bigger plan, a much bigger plan, including the digital ghetto stuff, including, keeping Russia from being the provider of gas to Europe. So they go in, it looks like, and there's like, and then it was like John Kerry and Biden line their pockets. It looks like that's always a part of it too. So Netanyahu's laughing his ass off. They tried to push him out, and now he's like, see, I stood my ground because these guys supported me, and look what I'm delivering to you. And his corruption will go on unabated. And Trump is also in it for the deal always. So they'll do that. And Trump said, we basically own Jordan, which I think is true. And they'll do what we want. And then you also have that larger Middle East thing. He's going to he said, I'm going to drag other people in and make them pay for it. What happens if they don't want to pay for it? That'll be a perfect excuse to keep bombing, keep spreading. And if you start a war with Iran, anything in between can be, consider itself under threat.
And just going back for a second to the mainstream alternative media who are defending Trump's New World Order, and the first administration, wasn't it? I forget the exact details, but Netanyahu burned Trump. He went against Trump the first time around. And even how does this make sense that Trump is one-upping Israel? Like, the U.S. is helping Israel clear out Gaza, and they're trying to flip it and say the U.S. is acting against Israel's interests. Like, what? Like, wait a minute. It'd be like Israel coming in to clean out Mexico for the U.S. and it's doesn't make sense, guys. So
Hrvoje, stop being so black-pilled. This is 5D chess to learn the rules.
Look at who is actually going to profit and build in Gaza. That's what I was thinking for a while, is that they that's what they're doing here in like my fire zone. The government's coming in to demolition everything. They're not going to make insurance pay. They're not going to make the builders pay. They're coming in, they're demolition everything. And then think of where the big money is in those rebuilding contracts. And I kind of felt like here, while I don't necessarily think they lit the match, the amount of negligence and dereliction of duty that made it inevitable there would be huge fires here. It's just crazy, and forest drought conditions, all this kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, just like all these other places, they destroy it and they build it because their job is to build. The broken window fallacy is only a fallacy if you take it as a whole. It's not a fallacy if you're not the guy who owned the window, but you have a window building company. So I would look at who's getting the contracts in Gaza. They're probably already negotiating it. I'm not kidding about Disney. It's supposedly a very like it will be a Mediterranean resort place, and Israel generally will benefit, but the people who own the actual resorts, that joke picture of Trump in the rubble, Trump Tower in the rubble is not, I don't think it's a joke.
No, neither do I. And I think, I think you was really on point with that, Hrvoje, when you said it's a contradiction what they're telling us to say that no one can live there, it's a mess, it's going to take years, but we're going to make it fantastic. And it's like, well, that means they can come back then, right? But I think that what they're saying about Palestinians moving permanently, do you think that this is actually, there's some mileage in what people are saying, that actually this place is just a mess, that might be the best solution? If you take out your empathy and you don't care about that part, you're looking at it purely from let's say a cold-hearted perspective, do you think that solves the situation like some people are saying?
What solves the situation?
Having the US there instead of Israel directly. That's what people are suggesting.
I mean, it's just kind of making...
this is the best of all the bad.
They're trying to make it more palatable what they're doing. But I mean, even from a Christian perspective, it's like there are Christian Palestinians. You are clearing out a people group. But beyond that, those were their homes. That's where they were born and lived. And it's kind of like, how is it? We make an exception just this one time, but if you do that in the other part of the world, it's you can't. But here now you can. I don't know.
It's very disempowering to uproot everybody. But if they may make them give up. So I know somebody, Palestinian Christian, who has title to his land. He's not allowed to go back. There is no right of return for him. He has the actual title. They may get ahead of that by saying, we will give you this, Saudi Arabian built condo in exchange for that piece of paper. It'll be in Jordan, and you have to, because when you look at the original, I have a book called Lawrence of Arabia, and it has a lot of interesting stuff about the original settlement of Israel. The people who were there before, because they had a different, premise of how to own land, like it wasn't totally the English way or the American way. It was like, this is my defined lot, this is my piece of paper. They were a little bit, I think, tricked or manipulated into making that swap, and then they say, well, that was my land, and you're like, no, you signed, kind of like American Indians kind of thing. So I would guess that they would try to make it legit like that, and then the question of returning won't reemerge, and then will it solve the problem of that? Yeah, but everybody's going to live in the Truman Show. It's going to live, it'll solve the problem. I think they've wanted to destroy the history inherent in the Middle East for a really long time, which is why the first thing they did in Iraq was destroy the museum. And I think this goes with that.
Yeah, sadly, I agree. I mean, I don't have a solution to what's going on over there because it's, like you said, it's a long-term plan and they've enacted it, and we're getting towards the end of it now, and I think we can see what that end's going to look like. And when Trump said that we're going to find a place for them in Jordan or Egypt, I was thinking, I think a lot of them will end up in Europe. A lot of those people, that seems to be what happens throughout history, is they just send all these angry people to Europe, and then Europe foots the bill for it. So I think that's probably what will happen.
Or maybe the US, Canada. But also, I'm reading the Old Testament, like from cover to cover for the first time, and like I'm still on like Exodus and Deuteronomy and stuff, And I mean, every single page is like, I'm going to give you this land, and it doesn't matter that people live there and they built this stuff, but they pissed me off, so I'm giving it to you, you. And if I had that historical narrative about a physical piece of land, I can understand completely why. I mean, my guess is the mindset is very biblical, revanchist or whatever, but biblical. And, so even if there isn't an occult thing or a futures thing or an antichrist thing, there is definitely something biblical going on, I think.
I would, from the Christian worldview, the Old Testament stuff was okay because God was directly speaking to the Israelites. And at that time, the other tribes were, doing
pagans.
stuff that God didn't like. And okay, but now it's like they've rejected God, but
they lost it. Yeah, absolutely. They lost it for sure. But
of their own accord. But even this, I don't know. A lot of this stuff for me, again, is with this why can't I step back, and there's like supernatural stuff going on, occult stuff. I don't know.
It says if you disobey the law, you will lose it. I'm pretty sure it says that in there. I have to go back and read it. But I'm just saying, like, religious wars, I'm also reading about the wars of the Reformation and stuff. Religious wars will put a whole new level of, self-sacrifice and even brutality into a fight, into, the regular rules of right and wrong don't apply when you think it's, a good versus evil thing. And both sides might think that. So.
Yeah, and it talks a lot in the Bible as well about. It talks a lot in the Bible as well. I'm reading it too right now, but I'm not as structured as you. I'm just kind of bouncing around. But yeah, it talks a lot about how there's Jews, and then there's the bad ones that are not really Jews. They're just imitating Jews, and it was the Pharisees and these high priests that were doing all of the evil. And that's how I see things now. I think there's a lot of decent people, and they're in Israel. That's where they live. But there's also these people at the top who smack quite a lot. And those people, they don't believe, I personally don't believe that they're following anything good. I think they're following something really evil. And maybe they've managed to indoctrinate a lot of people to that kind of ideology. But there's a lot of good people as well. And I don't like to throw out babies with bathwater on this one. So I always say that. And reading the Bible, it says, in the first and second book of John, that there's these evil ones who are not real Jews. They're just they call them the synagogue of Satan, right?
I mean, I live in the United States. Like, this is the empire. All of the evil that is done in the world in my name, I don't want responsibility for that. I have no power over it whatsoever. And I don't want me to be the baby thrown out with the bathwater when people rightly criticize the evil, murderous injustices of the Anglo-American empire. I definitely don't. I'm not doing that. I'm not anything. I feel like there's definitely, even the idea of, is Jesus the Jewish Messiah? If you think he is, then I don't understand how the evangelical thing I just don't understand that alliance between evangelicals and Israel, given that you either accept the Messiah or you don't. I don't know. But anyway, I just feel like there's a lot more religion to it than, even though they're not necessarily religious people over there, I feel like there is something biblical.
Oh, I think it is. I mean, they've already got the red heifer, and apparently there's been a lot of tunneling going on under the temple. I've just been doing an episode for my show on the Knights Templar, going back to looking at when they were excavating under Solomon's temple, and these bloodline families that did the Crusades, and then they captured the whole land. And everything that's happening now is a part of a big continuum. Like, this goes back thousands of years, and I think, if you don't read the Bible, if you do read it now, you'll find, wow, we're living through something that's been going on for a long time, and it links it all together. And the next part of it is end times. Now, I'm not saying that's where we're going, but I'm saying there are people out there who actively want to trigger that. I think they would like to trigger the end times because they are on the other side and they're desperate to have this one world currency. They're desperate to have a technocracy. They're desperate to have AI controlling everything so they can bring about what they see as the they want to push that domino that takes us there. And a lot of the things that are happening now, I think, I could see how within 10 years they could have the kind of control they need to do that. And then the third temple, right, is the last piece of that puzzle, and that seems to be what they're going to build. I mean, I don't know how they get to that. They'll need a war, right, between the Muslims and maybe the US now. Maybe it'll be the US out there who do that war.
I think we're slowly winding down. Though I wanted to mention the Francis Boyle stuff. And that's kind of related to Israel, Palestine. Here's sharing screen. So I think he wrote in the 90s one of the potential peace agreements for Israel and Palestine, which was rejected.
Wow.
And in
like
one
the
of my,
Oslo Accords era?
something like that. And in my second interview with him a couple years back, he said, like, Palestine's a lost cause. Everyone's given up on Palestine. And so Boyle I interviewed, I did a whole Substack write-up on him. So he's from Illinois like myself, and he passed at age 74. He always says he followed Kissinger at the university. I think he took Kissinger's chair or seat or something like that. But he passed January 30th, 2025. And I was the first to interview him on COVID, January 30th, 2020. And, in my write-up, I mentioned I used his books in my courses. Like, this was in the 2010. Wow. So I was already familiar with Boyle way back when. And then basically here you can see on my screen, it was 311,000 views.
Wow.
That interview before it got removed, you can see, and I believe it was seen by millions because many places re-uploaded it. So I'm certain it was seen by millions. And then my face was on the front page of InfoWars.
Right on.
And then Alex Jones did a play-by-play. Here's a clip.
If you just do a very simple Google
That's
search,
InfoWars playing my podcast the next day.
Does China have a BSL-4 laboratory? Wuhan comes up right away.
That's InfoWars playing the video.
That's all. The moment this type of thing happened, I began to do that. And so a BSL-4 is the most serious type. And basically, BSL-4 labs, we have many of them here in the United States, on broadcasting worldwide.
And that's Alex Jones
there
again.
There is an incredibly important article up on Infowars.com of absolute biblical proportions. A creator of bioweapons.
So he's referencing my interview.
How did he pronounce your name?
They didn't say my name.
That's why you went to Hollywood. Is that when you got taken out as well on?
Well, I mean, he incorrectly referenced me. Instead of saying Geopolitics and Empire podcast, he said Boyle gave it to like DV Media or something. Which no. So and they kind of stole my thunder. They keep saying they were the first, and I'm like, I think. Yeah. On one interview, Boyle actually corrected Jones and said, I gave it first to Geopolitics and Empire. And
wow.
Even in the book, the first chapter of the book is here. This is from his book, Resisting Medical Tyranny. He details the history, how he got my email January 23rd, Geopolitics and Empire, willing to give him an interview. And
that's really cool, Hrvoje, that he was even in the book.
Yeah, the whole first chapter is the transcript. Cool. And then he...
is that Spiro?
Yeah, well, what happened then? Then Spiro asked me on his show to talk about this.
Yeah, and then you talked to him, I think.
I think so. And then I bring this up because I specifically said March 2020 that COVID was all about bringing in global oligarchy. And now you have Joe Rogan saying, let's bring in oligarchy. And I'm like, I literally said that was the purpose of COVID. None of this. Wow. A lot of alt media gets hung up on all this medical stuff. And the Associated Press mentioned Geopolitics and Empire doing a hit piece on Boyle. And then that was written by...
A hit piece on Boyle?
Yeah, and I was mentioned. And that same week, I was deleted from Patreon. And that article was written by, you can see, by Atlantic Council, NATO's think tank. So it says... This the AP collaborated with Atlantic Council. And this journalist, this bastard... David Klepper. So this was February 2021. I remember, I have it in my emails. July of 2020, David Klepper emailed me, Associated Press, and he asked me, hey, kind of like, see what you're doing. Like, are you interested? We're doing a paper. I'd like to do a piece on you. I'd like to get to know, who you are and your Boyle interview. I did not respond because I knew it was going to be hit piece. I wish I would have saved it. I did a research like a few years back, and I found the piece, like when he contacted me July 2020, and then like a month later, I found his next piece that was published, and it was a hit piece on conspiracy theorists.
Wow.
So it didn't mention me because I didn't respond. But if I had responded, he would have said, "Oh, Hrvoje, more Geopolitics and Empire, conspiracy theory." Blah. And so, I mean, these people are insane. And then, I did 3 interviews with him in total. He talks about the U.S. going after Iran, Russia.
How did you
China.
connect with him?
I just emailed him.
Wow.
I emailed him, say, hey, can you tell me about COVID? Because I knew about his book, Biowarfare and Terrorism. And then this was after the hit piece. He says, this is an email Boyle sent to me. Yeah, thanks to you, partners in crime, he said, because he was also featured in the hit piece with the Ayatollah. And he said, that made my day. I'm still laughing.
That's great.
I was partners in crime with Boyle.
Wow.
So that's pretty much. And he's
that's a cool story, Hrvoje.
Yeah.
Super cool.
Yeah. But the problem is, Hrvoje, you was just a few years too early. You're allowed to speak about that stuff only when they tell you.
Now you can say lab leak, but again, that goes to what I'm saying, that's false. It's a dead end. Lab leak. And it's not even about labs.
Not a lab leak. It was intentional.
Right. This was all. I had an author. Right, he wrote a book and he asked to come on. I'm like, I didn't even answer because he's positing that it was an accidental leak.
Well, did Boyle say it was accidental?
Well,
that's why I was a little skeptical of him.
Well, he's refined it over.
He pulls his punches.
Yeah, I think he did. Because he's a lawyer, he'd be careful in what he said. Yeah. I think he did say it was a leak, but he would have mentioned the CDC was corrupt, the WHO was corrupt, that they knew what the stuff that was going on. He also did, I asked him in the interview that it was a pretext to bring in a police state, that the anthrax stuff was done by them as a false flag to bring in a police state.
Yeah.
That's what he said for 2001. And he agreed that COVID could be used to bring in a police state. But it's about bringing in the digital technocracy. This is what it was about. So I can't entertain anyone anymore who's talking about COVID as, it was accidental, man.
It's too late for that. And now we're living through it. Like they're unrolling these things en masse and people conditioned for it too. They're ready for the next round of AI technocracy, and it's Trump who's brought them both in. That's the key thing, right? Trump was the guy who did Operation Warp Speed and is also doing Operation, what's it called? Star Trek, Stargate. So, yeah, I mean, we'll give him his credit where it's due with Ross Ulbricht and on some of those other things with the DEI. That was good. But ultimately, I think the overarching agenda is steamrolling forwards.
Go watch the movie. I just saw this yesterday. Humane from last year. A global environmental collapse forces world leaders to take extreme measures to reduce Earth's population. It's like a movie on Netflix. Humane. We're going to humanely put shit down.
Yeah. Like the SPCA. It's like go to the Humane Society. What do they do there? They kill strays. That's really all they do, right?
Maybe
that's gaslighting.
We can end with Bill Gates. I found this is like Bill Gates on The View yesterday.
Before COVID, you say you spent the most sleepless nights worrying about
and he's like Netanyahu with that smirk. These guys are psychopaths.
Pandemics. After COVID, has that changed? And if it has, what keeps you up now? Because we all need to know.
Yeah, the pandemic sadly was fairly predictable, and it won't be the last pandemic. The next one could be far more severe. I mean, this one, it killed millions. It was awful. We got the vaccine. Actually, President Trump's leadership was.
Did you guys notice every time he says that, it's like he's almost joking, like, we got the vaccine, like he laughs.
Factor in getting that out quickly, and so I when I spoke to him, I said, okay, here's some other medical innovations, including a thing called an HIV cure that could be accelerated. So, we should be more prepared, both for a pandemic. I'd say that's still number one. You can worry about nuclear war. You can worry about AI.
This
There's
sounds like
plenty to worry about. But
do you
overall,
sleep
I'm
at
an
all?
optimist.
Okay.
No, I mean, it's up to the government to think ahead on behalf of the citizens.
Yes.
So,
Technocracy.
Pandemic,
Right.
there's a lot that we should be doing that hopefully we'll get our act together before the next one comes. Overall, the innovation in health, both in the developing countries, the rich world, I love being part of that.
I was reading, though, that you said the next pandemic you are predicting within maybe 25
Planning.
years. Is
Oh,
that
certainly
accurate?
we'll have one in the next
Yeah, planning.
Planning.
Can you tell us the
there's
exact
even
month?
some pathogens out there that we're watching over right now.
Well, he nearly said working on.
So maybe
Right.
20%
Wow.
chance in the next 4 years.
So he's
Yeah.
a doctor, right? His whole thing is he's a medical doctor. Not that I care about that, but it's ridiculous. Like they're asking him, but I guess in that one case, you can just learn stuff on your own. You don't need to be registered and licensed by the government to have authority, just in that one case.
Yeah. I've run right out of words. So
Crazy.
Yeah, me too. Well, that was a great show, guys. Thank you again for your time. And we've got another Q&A with listeners coming up, I think, in about 2 weeks, usually.
Yep.
Yeah, 2 weeks. So we'll put a call out to all of our respective audiences. So look forward to hearing your opinions on some of these things. And one more time from me, thank you all for listening. I'm Parallel Mike, Parallel Systems Broadcast.
I'm Monica Perez from The Monica Perez Show.
Hrvoje from Geopolitics and Empire, and also Geopolitica e Imperio, the Spanish version.
Nice.
Hasta la vista.